We're going to continue with standard normal probabilities or the normal distribution curve. We're going to be working with our standardized values or our z-score. Remember, z is equal to x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. We're going to do a little bit of review from yesterday, and we're going to look at some new stuff. If you remember from yesterday, what we had was an x value. Then what we did was we found a z value, and we ended up with a probability. Today, we're going to add something new to it. We're going to have a p-value, then we're going to convert it into a z-value, and then we're going to find our x-value. So this second step is what I have stated right here. Whenever we're trying to find the x-value, we first write it as a percentile. We change the percentile into a z-score, and then we find our x-value using inverse norm. Once again, if you have a calculator that has inverse norm, you want to use it. If not, you want to use Desmos. So with our example, we're first going to look at what we did yesterday for the first three examples, A through C. And then the second two, D and E, is going to be our new information. And I'm doing this so you can see the difference between how it's worded. So we have our word problem. I go fishing with my sons, and I notice that the amount of fish that I catch is a normal distribution. Whenever a problem says normal distribution, either you're going XZP or PZX. They tell us that the average number of fish is 6 and the standard deviation is 2. Now, if we're looking at the first one, we're trying to find the probability. So this is what we did before. We're trying to figure out our probability of more than 7 fish. So we're given an x value, more than 7. We now convert it into a z value, 7 minus the mean divided by the standard deviation, which of course is 1/2. And then what we do is we use normal CDF. And remember, our least value is 1/2. Our greatest value is a large number. I'm picking 100. And when I put it in the calculator, I get a probability or an area of 0.309. Now, if we're looking at letter B, in this case, it's less than 3 fish. So x is less than 3. Once again, since I have an x value and I'm trying to find my p value, this is a review of what we did yesterday. We change it into a z value. So that's z is less than 3 minus 6 over 2. That, of course, is negative 3 over 2, which is negative 1.5. Remember, since it's less than, when we do normal CDF, we're going to do negative 100 because that's a large negative number. And then we put in our negative 1.5, and that gives us a p-value of 0.067. Now, there's 3 different ways of doing for solving for the x. Either it's greater than, less than, or it's in between. Those are the only 3 possibilities. So in between 1 and 5. So that means if our x is in between, our z also is in between. 1 minus 6 over 2 and 5 minus 6 over 2. We're going to simplify it. So that gives us negative 5 over 2. And it gives us negative 1 over 2. So we're going to do normal CDF of these 2 numbers. And when we put it in our calculator, we get a probability of 0.302. So this right here is a review. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the new information. What I want you to see is how the wording changes. In each of these cases, what is the probability? What is the probability? What is the probability? So we start with our x and we end with our probability. Now if we're looking, it says how many fish. Fish is our actual x value, so we're trying to find x. Notice they give us a probability, the lower quartile. That's the bottom 25%. So in this case, we're going to do the opposite direction, or the inverse. So we're going to do inverse norm of 0.25. And that right there is going to give us a p-value. Our p-value is negative 0.674. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use the formula z equals x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. So we take our p-value, we set it equal to x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. Now, when we're trying to solve for this, we first multiply it by 2, and then we add 6. We're just solving it algebraically. And that right there gives us an x value of 4.65. Now, because we're trying to find the bottom 25%, we can't catch 0.65 of a fish. So in order to get the bottom 25%, we're going to round down to x is equal to 4 fish. Now, looking at letter E, this time it says how many fish, so we know we're finding the x, but it says the upper decile. If you're in the upper decile, you're in the top 10%. Now, if you write something as a percentile, it's always in terms of what's below it. So if you're in the top 10%, that means you are in the 90th percentile. 90% of people are below you. So we're going to do inverse norm of 90%, and that gives us 1.28. And we're going to use the same formula, z equals x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. This is equal to x minus 6 over 2. We're going to solve it algebraically. And how we solve it algebraically is we're going to take the 2, we're going to multiply it by the 1.26, and then we're going to add the 6. And when we do that, we get an x value of 8.56. Now, we can't catch 0.56 of a fish. Since we're wanting the top 10%, that means we're going to round up. So it's going to be x is equal to 9.